Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to our lecture today on accountability in the digital age. Before we start with our lecture, just briefly again some organizational aspects. So we will have a lecture for 50 minutes now, and then you will have 10 minutes allocated for Q&A. We will have your questions at the end of the lecture, and please put your questions into the chat function. And then we will collect them and ask them after the lecture. But please, no spam. So only your questions, please. Thank you. Our lecture today is Fritz Bussemaker. Fritz is the chair of has the chair of the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age, which was instigated by UNESCO in 2017 and aims to define instruments for and manage accountability in the digital age. Fritz has a passion for bringing people together in the digital age and has initiated and run a number of international communities who are focused on linking information technology, innovation, and impact. And with that being said, without further ado, Fritz, the floor is yours.
Leonard, thanks so much for the introduction. Assuming you hear me? Yep, good. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to share my screen because, as mentioned by Leonard, I chair the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age, and the next 50 minutes, I'm going to share you a number of observations we've made throughout the years around accountability, what's changing, what's happening. Some things you might already know, other things might be new for you, at least some cases I hope they are. But in all cases, I want to share this with you to get you thinking about, hey, what's happening and why I'll cover a little bit later. So I want you to follow this session not only as a professional, but also as a private person, because what we're talking about concerns you as an individual as well. By the way, yeah, so in order to make that happen, by the way, I'm going to briefly change something, Leonard. Sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. This allows a little bit better in presentation. Thank you for that. In order to look at this, not just look at the technological aspects of what we're going to discuss, but also look at the ELSI principles, ethical, legal, and social implications. Great. Now, where did this journey start? I would say this journey started with this page, and be interesting to know anybody recognize this page. But I'll tell you, this is the very first website ever created in the world by Tim Berners-Lee. Now, he created this in 1989 for CERN to allow people to communicate and for scientists to share information. But it's only in 1993 that it became information in the public domain. That's when he started to, and that's when the internet started to grow. I find it quite interesting that at the time it was just an application it was completely new for everybody, no rules, no legislation, but actually very quickly in the game, just 3 years later, the United States implemented the Consumer Communications Decency Act, the CDA. So just 3 years after the internet was launched, they realized we need to create a law for this new technology. And by the way, the main reason this law was introduced was to ban child pornography, make child pornography illegal, which is in itself very desirable to have that law. But a part of that law was also a clause 230, which suggested that the ISPs provided the information would not be held responsible for the information in their system. They just they provide an infrastructure, they provide a service for people to connect, they are not responsible for what goes through their system. And I think that is, I would say, a design flaw we still are suffering today, because how do you manage the content of the information which we share with each other in the information system? So, so we came in with a legal framework to talk about, okay, who's accountable and who's not. So the individuals were accountable for child pornography or not, but the people providing the technology were not held accountable, which I find significant. Okay, today over two-thirds of the people make use of the internet, have access to the internet. Having access doesn't mean you have meaningful access, because I do realize that in a first world country or in Europe, we have 5G, very fast broadband internet. In other parts of the world, sub-Sahara, we barely have 3C. So it's not on the same level, but in principle, two-thirds do have access to information. And over 50% of the people think the internet makes their life a lot better. And only 6%, according to a survey carried out in the States, feel that it has a negative impact. Having said that, the relationship we have with internet is complicated. Only 12% think it has a positive impact on society. So people realize we have this ambiguous relationship with the internet. Now, the internet, for a lot of cases, was just sharing information, access, maybe because it create business. But we've now moved into an area where, according to the World Economic Forum, we now live in a world where we're experiencing the fourth industrial revolution. And that's also where we have a combination of cyber physical. So what we do online has, I would say, real world applications. So for this is a bit of a context of in what context we're living, and we all know how big it is, but I just wanted to share that with you just to get a head start. The next slides, all slides, are just lots of examples of what's happening, and I want you to think again, both as a professional student, but also a private citizen, what do I think, what do I feel is happening in this world? And at the end, I'll tell you why. So what's happening today? Well, first of all, the actors are changing. This, apologies, this is a picture of how we would regulate traffic jams. This is a picture in the Netherlands. The government would put up these nice boards and tell us where's the traffic jam, how to get from A to B. So the government was responsible for this information. And there was some legislation behind that. Today, we've added our iPhone or our mobile app to go from A to B. But we have to realize that we now, rather than dependent on a government, we depend on a private entity, in a lot of cases, Google Maps or Waze or whatever, to determine if what's the best way to go from A to B. This has interesting applications. Just give you an example of a case which happened in the Netherlands, where a town council realized that they started to realize a lot of heavy traffic trucks were going through the town, which they were not used to in the past. And then they realized there was a factory a couple of towns over, and the quickest way to get to that factory was going through their little town. And it was the Google app which brought them into that town. And then they said, well, we actually don't want to avoid that traffic. So we want to avoid those heavy trucks getting into our town. So they approached Google, say, hey, could you maybe avoid, you could say, a recommendation for our town, so that the heavy traffic doesn't pass through our town, because we want to keep it nice and quiet. Now that didn't happen, but just think of what would happen if we do except that a private entity would say, well, we're happy to do that. If you pay me this amount of money, you might, yeah, we can help you there. It's not a desirable system, but it's just an example of the actors are shifting. Second example, um, in my research, this is the biggest bank in India I could find, and I I asked a couple of years ago. I asked a question to a couple of bankers in the United States, where I was part of a fintech event. Say, hey, who is your biggest competitor? And they were naming all the big banks they were thinking of as, okay, these are my primary competitors. This is who I compete with. And I was quite interesting to realize when I asked them, hey, have you ever heard of M-Pesa? Now, I'm hoping that the large majority of you have heard of M-Pesa, but I was quite surprised to see that the bankers I was talking to never heard of what M-Pesa is. And for those who know that, it's a payment system where you actually use your phone credit to make a micropayment rather than go through a bank, because hardly anybody in Africa has a bank account, but everybody has a mobile phone. So this is where a telco company is leapfrogging the financial system. So it's not a bank providing a financial service, it's actually a telco. Then you get in a very interesting situation where, because of technology, a completely different and new actor from a completely different industry is taking over. But we also have to realize that we have very strict rules and regulations for the banking system. We did not have that for the telco system. So again, a good example of where we need to catch up with what technology is providing us. Healthcare, same thing. If you're sick, you go to a doctor. If you're sick today, you might want to go to Apple or Google. Apple Watch is actually very good in telling if you're healthy or not. Question is this what you want or not? At least we have to be aware that the actors which we discuss our private lives with, where we do business with, is changing, and the legislation. So if something goes wrong, who's accountable, is not up to date, and that's creating a serious, I would say, accountability gap. So going through some other examples of what's happening and allow you to think about, okay, what does this mean for me? So a couple of examples. Social media. I don't know who of you shop online, assuming most of you have ever shopped online. I'm just wondering if somebody recognized this picture or recognized this example. Because if you look at the top shoe, it looks like there's a hair on a picture. Now, what do people do when they have this picture on a mobile phone and they see this picture? You probably want to swipe it off with your hand. The thing is, it's not the hair, it's actually programmed in the picture. And this is a great example of nudging, because you are then brought to a website you might not be interested in. And this is what's called an evil nudge. So you are brought to an internet page providing maybe products or services you are not interested in. Now, not everybody would be interested in this, but this is an example how we um, try to force people in a direction we don't want them, where they may not necessarily want to be. Um, again, share with you a program called Suicide, the Blue Whale game, a suicide game. Um, Philip Budikin, a guy from Russia, he created the Blue Whale Challenge. And this became quite an issue because in a couple of countries around the world, young people were committing suicide, and the police could not figure out what was the reason for that, what's their motivation. But they had also all had something in common. That was, hey, they jumped off a high building. And specifically in India, there was a situation where people realized, hey, we have an example of self harm, because this game is actually divided in about 50 steps. First step is watch a scary movie, show a picture that you're watching a scary movie. Somewhere on the line is cut yourself a little bit and show that you're bleeding. And it builds up to the last step in the game is throw yourself off a roof. Very serious game with real world applications. Um, but now you have to think about, okay, how can we stop this? And this is an example which is also used by UNESCO to demonstrate how tricky this is on an international level because the victims are in India, but the server and the inventor is in Russia. And you cannot remove the links from your website because the Indian Internet Watchdog did not allow that. That would be against, I would say, a superseding principle of equal access. But it created a very interesting, um, let's say, legal gap where people still haven't figured out what can I do to stop this from happening in my local society, whereas what's happening is caused by something I don't have control over. Now, same again, it's a little bit old example, but Cambridge Analytics, which um, was used to, let's say, influence the American elections. Again, data from Facebook was used to very specifically target people, and yeah, in hindsight, assessment is it has influenced the election with a different result. I do not know if I can actually share this with you, but this is also a reminder of how strong um, technology is at the moment. This is an installation by an artist, a Belgian artist called Dries de Porter. It's called The Follower. And in The Follower, he's using uh, Instagram photos which people post online and see if he can then find these people on the say publicly available open cameras. And this is nothing more than realizing that if you scrape the internet photos and then you scrape the open cameras available, you can actually see when somebody was there taking that picture. So, example, privacy in the public domain is gone. Now, as mentioned, in 1996, the CDA was put in place in the States. IPOs were not responsible for the information, even when they admitted they were responsible. So Mark Zuckerberg, he was asked to come on Capitol Hill and explain what happened. He basically agreed, look, I am responsible for what's happening in my technology. Even then, the legal people responsible for the rules and regulation did not understand what he was saying, and so it never changed. So social media is a domain where a lot of things can go wrong, and we still haven't regulated it yet. Okay, so what's happening in AI? We have to talk about AI. By the way, when we started the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age in 2017, believe it or not, AI was an afterthought. We only were talking about social media and cybersecurity. AI just barely made it into the game, and let's talk about it. And I think that's the dominant question at the moment. Now, I also chair AI for Good, or I'm one of the founders of AI for Good. So I predominantly believe that AI is beneficial for society, but we also want to discuss the negative sides of AI and how it's also creating accountability issues. So I'll give you an example. We know that companies, car manufacturers are working on self-driving cars, and is great for a driver, but it creates huge of legal aspects. Not just because workforce efforts. I mean, it is significantly and costing jobs, but these cars are hackable. In 2015 already, people were hacking into a Tesla car, so they were able to lock and unlock the car because of the technology. Uh, the technology is not perfect, and there's still no 100% autonomy. And then you have the question: so who is responsible for what? Now, I'll take you through this example where this game, you could say the tram dilemma, the trolley car dilemma, I would say is very well known. But it's interesting to see what AI engines would do in the same situation. And most AI engines, when they are presented with this program, will always choose to kill the one guy and not the five guys. Uh, because they don't have any moral implications. But there's a very significant difference between an AI engine making a decision and a human making a decision, and that is the fact that um, in one case the human does nothing, and the other case the human takes action. So if you are in a situation where um, you are in, I would say, an innocent bystander, which most people are, then you cannot be brought to justice if somebody dies, and somebody will die in this situation. But in an AI example, um, who are you then to blame? The person. Um, so if you take that to the car example, if an accident is caused by a car or by a driver, you have the legal principle of driver liability. So the driver is responsible for the accident. But what happens if you have a self-driving car? Who is then responsible? Is that the driver or is that the programmer of the technology? And then it's quite interesting that dependent on which countries, most countries will blame or put the legal blame on the manufacturer of the car and the programmer. Some might have a combination with the driver, but the fact that you make use of technology, the question you have to ask yourself then, can I uh, put the blame on technology, and can I then put the blame on this maybe legal accident on a programmer who provided me with the software? And then it's interesting to see that depending on where you are in the world, the culture will give you a different legal framework to choose. So it could be in principle that um, the way you program a car to avoid an accident will be different in India than it is in the United States or in England. So that's the implications you have to work with. Now, in this case, it was very much okay. In AI, it's not a machine, uh, or it's not a human human. But we see more and more that um, AI is being treated as a human. And so just want to share with you the example of Dubos, Dabus. I'll give you a picture of what Dabus invented. Dabus is an AI engine which specifically developed a fractal-based packaging solution which would allow robots to pick it up easier and would allow the content to be heated much more efficiently. But the question then is, can you award the AI who clearly invented this, can you award it a patent? Because owning a patent has implications. You can actually earn money off a patent in principle. Interesting to see that most countries rejected the principle of an AI engine, a non-human engine owning a patent. But there are exceptions. So South Africa is believed to be the very first countries in the world who actually awarded a patent to Dabus. So it's an invention by somebody in Australia. He couldn't get an Australian patent, so he started to shop around the world and realized, hey, I can actually get my AI engine to own the patent or not. Again, think of the legal applications if that means that if AI agents or the owners of the AI engine start to apply for all their patents in South Africa if they feel it's beneficial or not. Huge implications. This is Sophia. Sophia is a humanoid robot developed by Hanson Robotics. It was one of the first in its kind, but it's also the very first social robot which was given citizenship in South Africa. Interesting. So Sophia looks female. If you put a wig on her, definitely female. And the way it's designed looks female. But it's interesting to see that Sophia was awarded full Saudi Arabian citizenships with all the rights and obligations which comes with it. Sophia is also, by the way, the very first non-human to be given a United Nations title. She's basically the United Nations Development Programme's first innovation champion. So it's still early days, it's still a gimmick, but we have to be careful and mindful that we are starting to allow technology to behave as a citizen. Because of time, I'll move on quickly. Science. This is when ChatGPT was version 2.6. Norwegian researcher said, hey, could you write a scientific paper about yourself? And she was shocked and amazed because she realized that she opened Pandora's box because it was handed to Scientific American as if it was a paper written by a true scientist, and people were amazed to see that actually an AI engine was effectively doing science, so behaving as a human. Now, I would say we're only a couple of months later now, but everybody in a school, I think arguably will use some point or another ChatGPT. So we're actually already using AI to aid our own research and schoolwork. Is that a good thing to do or not? Well, Fitzgerald, the chief scientist of Google, but also the father of the internet, he's the guy who co-founded and co-invented the CTP/IP on which the internet is based. He said, we have to be very, very careful of how are we going to train these AI engines, because we do not understand actually how they learn, but we do understand that they do not understand the context in which they are learning. So they're not smart in the sense they know what they're doing, because at the end of the day, it's just statistics. So we need to build a system allowing us to understand how an AI engine is learning, and at the moment we don't. Again, where does the information come from on which an AI engine is based our advice? The more and more we use it, the more and more we realize we're creating big issues for ourselves. A couple of cybersecurity examples. I don't know if I can actually show this video or not. I'll just quick look.
Curtains, lights, doors. It even unlocks my car. And the only one with access is me.
Now, this is a mock-up, a spoof on Apple's presentation of the latest technology by a Dutch insurance company. But I find it quite a funny video as it proves how dependent we are on our security, on cyber technology, and where it can go wrong. And is it going wrong? Yes, lots of places. I'm not going to all the DDoS attacks or what's, but let's also look at the more, let's say, serious implications. See, next one. And that's where cyber attacks are becoming in the physical world. So, as mentioned, we're in the fourth industrial wave, and we also have seen already ransom attacks on our pipeline system. So, I'll give an example of the Colonial Pipeline. That's a pipeline in the United States where a group of people hijacked about 100 gigabytes of data, which was taken hostage. And this is the pipeline which operates over 5,500 miles, delivering 45% of the gasoline to the jet fuel applications on the airports on the east coast of the United States. And they realized that if they did not pay the ransom, airline fuel would not be pumped through the pipeline. Planes would not be able to fly in, and they would be able to shut down half of United States flights almost. So it is becoming real life and exercise, not just a paper exercise. I was wondering if somebody still recognized this picture. You might not be old enough, but this is a still from the movie Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997. That movie came out. And this is where art precedes reality. Because what happened in this movie, that the people in the movie, the bad guys, they manipulated the GPS signal to allow a boat to assume it's being in one place where actually was somebody else. Now, why is this significant? Because in the research, people realized that what happened a couple of years ago in Suez Canal Evergreen, where this ship got caught stuck in the Suez Canal. Now, over 300 vessels were caught at both ends. It cost 9.6 billion worth in trade was prevented. Research suggests that this might have been a deliberate cybersecurity breach because maybe the rudder in the ship got attacked, and that's why it went out of place. Even if it's not the case, this example, this thought experiment, has led to Alliance Global Corporate to release in their and this is the biggest insurance company in the world almost, a safety and shipping review in a couple of years ago, that this could be a real life example of what a cybersecurity breach could be. And again, how do you manage this? Who is responsible? So how are you going to hold people accountable is the key question here. I'm going to briefly show you this video again. You may be for
Pilots directed almost 3,000 precision strikes last year. We're super proud of it. It allows you to separate the bad guys from the good. It's a big deal. But we have something much bigger. Your kids probably have one of these, right? Not quite. Hell of a pilot? No. That skill is all AI. It's flying itself. Its processor can react 100 times faster than a human. The stochastic motion is an anti-sniper feature. Just like any mobile device these days, it has cameras and sensors, and just like your phones and social media apps, it does facial recognition. Inside here is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works. Did you see that? That little bang is enough to penetrate the skull and destroy the contents. They used to say guns don't kill people. People do. Well, people don't. They get emotional, disobey orders, aim high. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions. Now, trust me, these were all bad guys. Now, that is an airstrike of surgical precision. It's one of a range of products. Trained as a team, they can penetrate buildings, cars, trains, evade people, bullets, pretty much any countermeasure. They cannot be stopped. Now, I said this was big. Why? Because we are thinking big. Watch.
Okay. Now, I wanted to stop that video there a second, just to give you know a flavor of what's happening in warfare at the moment. And the big accountability question is, do we want machines to control warfare at the moment? And I realize at the moment that Ukraine, unfortunately, is a very big training ground for this technology. It's becoming more and more autonomous. I think as a society, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want or not? Now,
So Fritz,
yes.
is your presentation still on the share mode? Because we don't see the next slides coming. Like we just see the old picture of the pipeline actually. Can you hear me? Okay. I cannot hear you.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I have to very quickly go through the slides. So I do not know which slides you missed or not.
We didn't see the video about the drone actually.
Okay, good. Okay, in that case, let me just skip that video because of lack time. But that I wanted to share that video to get you thinking about what do I want as an individual, as a society? Do I want to give so much control, lethal control, life and death control to a system? And then who's going to be accountable? Again, the programmer, the person driving the drone, or who else? We haven't solved that question yet. Good thing I do want to point out, we're using the same AI technology to also make good use of technology. So rather than going into stealth mode, we now design the camouflage nets and a patch on a plane that the AI engine looking at this, because it's predominantly AI engines, is not recognizing a tent or a plane. So there's some good examples of stopping that. But I actually want to move on to where the accountability issues, because these are all these examples what's happening in the world. And it's actually Michael Rogers, the former director of the NSA, who said, we're in a position today, technology outstripped the legal framework. So technology is moving much, much faster. And all the examples I just gave you demonstrate that. So we're in a continuous catch game. So what to do? One example, for instance, we had the GDPR in 2021 being introduced in the European Commission. But we do realize that GDPR assumes a rational database where you can take out information if, because of the right to be forgotten, if you want to take something out as a citizen, you're allowed to take it out. But what happens if you introduce blockchain? Because then you store something for eternally in that system. And that's interesting to see where the culture differs, because in the Netherlands, we're very pragmatic and state, look, if we throw away the key, you can't access it anymore. So we throw away the key, you're lost. In Germany, they anticipate on quantum computer technology, allowing to replicate the key if you throw it away. So where we in the Netherlands still are allowed to store things in blockchain, Germany goes a little bit way overboard and a little more stricter with their privacy. Okay, we do not allow you to use blockchain because in the future we might invent technology which will allow you to get access. So that legal framework of GDPR is implicitly based on the technology at the time, and as technology um, um, evolves, the laws become at least not obsolete but outdated, and we have to repair that. UNESCO had the same issue, so UNESCO said we really need to have a discussion on accountability on a global level, get all the actors together. That created the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age. And why accountability? At the end of the day, responsibility is what you can decide before the action. Accountability is determining who is responsible when something has already taken place, when something has gone wrong. So it's a fundamental right on which we based our ideas on privacy and security. Accountability is needed. We know it's needed. So as mentioned, I am part of the AI for Good movement, and I already saw the big vendors um, describing a need for accountability. So the guy from Microsoft said, okay, it's a fundamental asset on which we base our transparency laws, on which we base our fairness and reliability and privacy laws. Same what the guy from Siemens presented. But a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to ask Newt Gingrich a question, what he thought about accountability in the digital age. And we were in the room with about 150 people. And I asked him the question, sir, what's your view on accountability in the digital age? Now, he's a lawyer by background. There were about 150 people in the room, and he gave me the answer, well, just like the car, new innovation, it took us about 10, 20 years to invent the road laws, rules and regulations we know today. And they've been over time. And I find it amazing that 2/3 of the room agreed with his idea. It's just another innovation. Whereas the people with a little bit more insight in technology and how fast technology is realized we cannot wait 10, 20 years for the legal framework to catch up with. So we cannot just assume that the analog legal framework will take care of us. We need to do something different. That's why this whole discussion is needed in the first place. So we had a couple of events in the Peace Palace to talk about this, and we realized that we do have lots of solutions which will help us get there. This is just some examples. So Vince Cerf, we had him speaking in the room. We had Gary Shapiro in the room on the top left, top bottom corner there. Can't point him out, but it was interesting when I invited Gary Shapiro, and he's the head of the Consumer Technology Association, to organize the CES in Las Vegas. He said, hey, we have a industry-led legislation. Europe has an government-led legislation. So for exactly the same question, how do we regulate technology, we have different belief systems how we're going to provide a solution or not. And that creates quite a challenge to have. So, long story short, I'll skip this discussion. We did come up with the Hague Charter. How are we going to have a discussion on accountability in a digital age, given the fact that we have so many different cultures which come into play, because these cultures determine at the end of the day what kind of rules and regulations we want to employ. Skip the report. We talked to lots of people around the world about their perspectives. So I urge you to watch the Institute for Accountability Dialogues, which gives you an idea how people in the world think about how to deal with this issue. But is this a 21st century issue where we need 21st century solutions? I'm almost there, by the way, just a couple of more slides, and then we got some questions. Because we also realize that next to accountability, we have transparency. And there is this belief that the minute we become very transparent in what we do, if we demand transparency, we see what's happening, then we might be able to understand what's happening in that box. We also see, again, Europe very much heavily works with government legislation, but there are more and more countries out there who want industry legislation, assuming that will actually give us a quicker and more practical solutions. And we also see more and more the idea of AI governed technology. So we make use of the AI technology to read all the legislation, for instance, out there. And another thing which is happening on a legal level, we are shifting very heavily from a rule-based to a principle-based. Rule-based, you have to explicitly describe what you're doing wrong, and then we'll put a sanction on it. Principle gives us much more room and flexibility to judge people and judge actions on what's actually happening and the guidelines. So there's a shift in how the legal framework is using the technology and repositioning itself to cope with this technology. All good. We even have the United Nations coming in with, we have an International Institute for Atomic Energy, for climate change. We need to have one for AI as well. So this is just one of the solutions, get everybody together. But if you then ask Google, how many people are looking at AI accountability tools? We already have 40 million hits. Now, if you then break that down to the OECD website, I urge you to have a look at this. A couple of years ago, when I did the first search, we have about almost 600 frameworks, tools people can use to regulate technology. We don't even have 200 countries in this world. So we have a lot of rules and regulations, but how do we get this aligned on an international level? And the scary thing is, this was 2 years ago, and this is the number I looked up last week. So the number of rules and regulations is growing. This is not that we don't think about accountability or regulating the technology. It is, we have way too much of it. And that brings me to the last, I would say, ELSA related question. So how do we cope with this technology at the end of the day? This is my presentation of you and me, because at the end of the day, I do believe in order to regulate technology, we have to look in the mirror, and we have to be part of the discussion to, as an individual even, in the technology we use, the programs we watch in, hey, what do we allow to grow or not? Because at the end of the day, we have to be part of the discussion, because if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. So accountability is not something we need. We can delegate to somebody else. We all, as an individual, need to be held accountable, how difficult that may be. But that is what I wanted to share with you. Apologize for rushing through the slides a little bit, Leonard. And I realize we have 10 minutes left, but hopefully this gives you a flavor of what we're dealing with when we come to this accountability issue. We have beginning of solutions, let's be hopeful. We also have to be aware of all the issues out there.
Okay, thank you so much, first of all, for your great presentation. It was really insightful, and no problem with, we managed to be like just on time, so that's
Yeah.
perfect. I'm just having a brief look at the question. So for now, we have like one asking more about personal data protection. I don't know whether you can answer, but it's more about if you visit the website, how can the user make sure that where the data goes and that it is like used correctly according to the rules and regulations, and if not, what can the user do to ensure that?
Unfortunately, you can't. And this reminds me of an example a couple of years ago where the case was in Hong Kong, where Instagram updated its rules and regulations, but they did that very sneaky. Everybody who has a phone or any other device, if you would want to read the rules and regulations, which everybody just immediately accepts most of the time, if you actually want to read that out, it's going to take you about 72 days. There's an American university who estimated on average all the apps we have. If you want to read that out loud, it takes you 72 days. Nobody's doing that. But what happens is what has happened in a case where organizations would send a request for a software update, and very sneakily, you did not only got a software update, you also have a terms and reference update. And it was almost discovered by design that in this case, I believe it was Instagram or one of the other picture apps, said that, look, from now on, all the pictures you share with me, but all the pictures you're going to take in the future, I own that. And they had to replace that rules and regulation. Now, how did we find out? Somebody has been very wisely in developing an AI engine which is comparing rules and regulations with each other. So every time there's an update, you get in this particular app, you get and I'll see if I can share that with you, an opportunity to check not only am I getting new software, has also what I signed up for changed or not. Because you might assume the minute an organization or an app developer is brought to a country, please assume that a government has checked, is it compatible to our rules and regulations? It's only in the updates where people might face situations where sneakily the terms and conditions change. So unfortunately, you can never be certain that it's changed. People are working on solutions, as just mentioned, but we don't have a solution yet. At least I'm not aware of a solution. So maybe not the answer you're looking for. We're working on solutions by providing huge sanctions if companies break the law. That's what GDPR is doing. But then even if the big platforms of this world get billion-dollar fines because they ignored particular rules and regulations, they still go through it because it still weighs out. So you might want to ask yourself, and that's what I mean looking in the mirror, if you do not trust the system, don't use it. Don't share your data with an application where you feel, hey, this might be dodgy. At the end of the day, you gave the data, you are accountable for sharing that information. And I think we're way too addicted to all these applications which are provided us. So get offline, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, also, I think I read the same thing once, that it takes really long to read these rules and regulations, which is insane in my opinion, because no one has like all the time to read through them. a bit related to that, I would say, is about the sort of the trade-off between privacy and also accountability, because one of our students has argued that the EU is quite strong about data protection also through the GDPR, but then it has recently there was or recently now that they would like to introduce this chat control to sort of surveil like messages, even though that they are actually encrypted. And the question is, how to strike a good balance, between the compromise between accountability and privacy. So what sort of thoughts you have on that?
Well, my personal thoughts is just an observation that it's a very tricky balance because it's, I would say, an individual assessment where you want to have that balance. And it's also dependent on your individual, I would say, idea of what kind of privacy and how much information, how transparent you want to be with your information. And you have the element of a cultural shift, because the way people view their privacy just differs per region, even within Europe. The way, as mentioned with the whole blockchain example, how we look at our privacy compared to Germany differs. So there's almost no one size fits all, because it determines on who built that system. How does that individual, how does that organization releasing the technology? What's their perspective on the technology? Again, don't educate yourself as good as possible, and I would say walk with your feet, or vote with your feet. A good example is what I'm seeing happening in, for instance, in Europe a lot. People are moving away from WhatsApp to Signal, purely based on the fact that the terms and conditions WhatsApp are now offering. Yes, we protect all your privacy, and at the same time, they're providing an AI engine, which is keeping track of everything you put in there. So do I trust this organization? What, on one hand, okay, I will respect your privacy, but at the same time, I am trying to ease you to use my AI technology. Or would you go with technology which is not even going there, and making the trade-off? So don't look at the assessment of the particular app. Look if that particular app, that product, has alternatives, and make a decision what you feel works best for you. I see some more questions coming in.
Yeah, exactly. I think also given the time, I would like take the last one, because I think it's like was very relevant for us. And it's just more about the I had like 2 points. I think one is more about the environmental impact it has. So one of the students mentioned that it has, that these, I guess that powering these AI systems needs a lot of, electricity and power. And the question is, how to strike a good, balance between keeping these things operating and then, the additional cost, the electricity supply has for the environment, and the same goes for the rare earth minerals, so that we need like certain resources as inputs to keep these systems running, but then, these inputs have like environmental costs, and where's like the, the balance, or like to what extent is that justified? And a bit connected to that, if I understand it correctly, is given the scarcity of these inputs, how likely is it that the benefits of AI will be actually available to everyone on this planet, right? So will actually everyone has access to them?
Couple of final remarks there. First of all, we don't have to assume a static world. I see a very innovative industry that the metals and amount of rare metals we need today, or we needed a couple of years ago, is shifting to other metals, other and lesser use of metals. So we're continuously reinventing the technology to increase, I would say, the footprint. Doesn't always work, but at least that ambition is there in general. That's what I see. What the impact is also it's almost a non-causal question. And what I mean is you cannot have two worlds in parallel, one where we make use of the technology and one where we don't make use of technology, and see what the impact is on society. What I do see is that these systems we're so addicted to are also not only costing energy, but also saving energy, because they are allowing us to do things which we otherwise would not do. So we have to not only look at how much energy are we using and how can we make the energy more and more use efficient, but what is it replacing? It's very difficult to compare. Okay, like we're having a discussion right now around accountability with about 200-300 people attending. Yes, it costs energy to allow this meeting to take place, like this sharing of knowledge. But if we did not have this technology, we all physically needed to travel to one location, have that place. How much energy does that cost? So you have to look at the bigger picture when you think about how much energy the system costs. And also you need to make decisions, which is, I mean, look, just data centers are now making users question, okay, do I need to store all the information and put in my system? Because all the 20,000 pictures I've now stored on my iPhone, do I really need those 20,000 pictures? And do I need those pictures every moment of the day? Do I have access to that information? So you're now seeing innovations like, I would say, the information I am obliged to store on record. For instance, I'll move all that data. What's happening in the Netherlands, for instance, is we're not storing it in the Netherlands where energy is expensive. I'm moving all the data which I need to store, I need to keep, but I'm moving it, for instance, to Norway, and I only access it the minute I need that, because I know that if I store it there, it's cheaper and cleaner energy. Now, what I'm seeing is, so AI is costing and technology is costing energy, is costing rare metals. But my positive takeaway is at least I see a willingness to improve on that and limit the footprint. Not really an accountability question, but again, maybe that's accountability on the use of technology. And again, if you feel that's an issue, you can be held accountable by not using that technology if you feel that's an issue.
Okay, thank you for that. Unfortunately, we're running out a bit of time. But I would like to thank you very much for your question, for your presentation. Thank you for being here with us and giving us some insights into accountability in the digital age, which I think is really relevant, even given that our AI systems are basically black boxes and not really understandable. So thank you very much, Fritz, for your time. Have a nice afternoon later. And the rest of the students, we'll see you back later in half an hour, I think, already for your cybersecurity game. Okay. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.